I spent years paying my family's bills until I saw them on a luxury trip laughing at me. My name is Daniel, and I've spent most of my 31 years living in Chicago navigating complexities of family expectations. By all outward measures, you'd think I've got life pretty well figured out. A successful career in marketing, a cozy apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, and the ability to splurge occasionally on nice dinners, tickets to Cubs games, and high-end gadgets that impress my friends. But beneath the shiny exterior lies a deeper frustration, an ongoing bitterness I've kept hidden for years. Let me introduce you to the star of our family show, Ashley, my older sister by 3 years, who could probably walk on water if you asked our parents. She's a picture of suburban perfection. Married to Ryan, the type of guy who grills steaks while discussing stock market trends and looks like he jumped straight from a Land's End catalog. They live in Naperville, complete with a pristine lawn, and 2 annoyingly well-behaved kids named Logan and Emma. Since we were kids, Ashley could sneeze, and my parents would frame it as an act of brilliance. Straight-A student, homecoming queen, graduated summa cum laude, and now president of the PTA. Her achievements form a never-ending highlight reel my parents proudly display like trophies. Meanwhile, my accomplishments, like landing a promotion at work or finally learning how to make a decent chili, rarely earn more than a polite nod. I sometimes wonder if they even remember where I work. Last Thanksgiving, Mom introduced me to Aunt Linda. As Daniel, he works with computers, I think. For the record, I don't work with computers, but after years of correcting them, I've given up. Don't get me wrong, I love my family. When Ashley had her first child, Logan, I was first in line to help out financially when Ryan lost his job due to market instability, or as I secretly suspected, general incompetence. Whenever Mom and Dad needed urgent repairs on their old Victorian house or faced medical expenses that Medicare mysteriously refused to cover, my phone buzzed before anyone else's. I told myself it was my duty, since I didn't have the added expenses of a family. After all, who needs to save for retirement when you have relatives determined to live their best lives right now? Funded by the Bank of Daniel? The truth? They'd grown comfortable leaning on me, and my wallet had become their safety net. Last year, Ashley's roof leaked, and somehow that became my financial emergency. Ryan decided he wanted to become an entrepreneur again, and my savings became his startup fund. Mom broke her ankle attempting Zumba, and Dad's ancient Toyota finally bit the dust. Each crisis came with a price tag bearing my name. My carefully saved rainy day fund evaporated quicker than Chicago's sunshine in February. Still, despite this never-ending cycle, I clung stubbornly to one personal dream, traveling the world, beginning with Paris. The city of love and lights represented everything I craved, a break from responsibility, an escape from family obligations, and a chance to finally taste a freedom that had eluded me for years. I imagined myself strolling along the Champs-Élysées, eating freshly baked croissants at tiny street-side cafes, and obnoxiously posting every single moment on Instagram to make my friends back home jealous. But every time I got close to clicking book flight, another urgent family emergency conveniently appeared. After nearly a decade of delays, setbacks, and the ongoing drama of family finances, I finally scraped together enough cash for my dream vacation. I booked everything, tickets, a cute boutique hotel with a balcony view over the Seine, even snagging reservations at a Michelin-starred restaurant because, heck, I deserved it. This time, nothing would stop me. I'd even set my email out of office message to currently eating baguettes and ignoring my family. Departure day arrived, and as I stood in O'Hare, passport clutched in one sweaty hand, suitcase in the other, I felt a mixture of excitement and disbelief. It was actually happening. This wasn't a drill or a daydream during boring work meetings. It was real, and I was moments away from drinking overpriced airport coffee and browsing duty-free like a tourist. Feeling particularly generous and, frankly, to mark the occasion, I decided to upgrade my ticket to business class. As I swaggered to the crowded terminal, imagining myself reclining in luxury seats and enjoying complimentary champagne, reality smacked me right in the face. There, at the entrance of first-class boarding, stood Ashley, Ryan, my nieces, and my parents, casually chatting and laughing as if starring in their own holiday commercial. The shock nearly made me choke on my imaginary champagne. Confusion and disbelief paralyzed me. No one had mentioned a family trip, especially not one so extravagant. My mind raced. Was I having a stroke, or had my family actually managed to plan a trip without demanding my credit card details? Instinctively, I slipped behind a nearby pillar, hiding like a poorly disguised detective. That's when I overheard Ashley's voice clearly above the airport chaos, punctuated by her unmistakable laughter. "Honestly," she said, amusement clear, "Daniel wouldn't fit in here anyway." My parents chuckled softly, nodding along with Ashley's judgment. Their laughter pierced deeper than I expected, sharp and painful. Standing there, unnoticed behind my makeshift hiding spot, the truth hit me harder than Chicago winter wind. I've been sacrificing my dreams, my savings, my entire adult life for people who didn't even see me as belonging in their little circle. To them, I was nothing more than a conveniently generous outsider, someone to call when the ATM said no. I watched silently as they boarded, laughing and smiling, completely unaware I'd seen and heard everything. Suddenly, Paris lost its charm. My excitement turned sour, bitterness overtaking joy. I stood frozen in place, suitcase heavy in my hand, while my flight announcement echoed through the terminal. My carefully suppressed resentment surged to the surface. In that moment, hidden behind an airport pillar amid bustling travelers, something broke in me, and I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The flight to Paris felt strangely hollow after witnessing my family's betrayal at the airport. I had imagined this moment countless times, sipping champagne midair, stretching my legs in business class, and reveling in the thrill of finally pursuing my dream. But reality rarely matches the daydream, especially when bitterness creeps into the equation. Instead of joy, I found myself replaying Ashley's cutting remark over and over, like a bad song stuck annoyingly in my head. As soon as the wheels touched down at Charles de Gaulle, Paris threw its charm at me like confetti at a parade. The city was breathtaking, warm lights shimmering along the Seine, the enticing scent of pastries wafting from tiny corner bakeries, and couples strolling hand in hand everywhere, radiating an effortless romance I felt painfully excluded from. It seemed every cafe chair, park bench, and cobblestone path was deliberately placed to remind me I was experiencing this alone. On my first night, I wandered aimlessly through the Latin Quarter, trying to shake off the lingering hurt. I stopped into a cafe to distract myself with espresso and an overpriced pastry that crumbled disappointingly on my plate, much like my illusions about family loyalty. Sitting there, surrounded by animated conversations in languages I didn't understand, I felt isolated. It occurred to me how strange it was to feel lonely in a city so crowded with life. The days that followed were no easier. The Louvre was magnificent, but every masterpiece seemed to whisper sarcastically about my failed family relationships. Mona Lisa's enigmatic smile seemed to mock my predicament. At Versailles, I joked bitterly to myself that Louis XIV might have had less drama at his court than I had back home in Chicago. Even a simple stroll through the beautiful Luxembourg Gardens, where families gather happily, brought a sting of jealousy. Every place I visited, every photo I snapped, reminded me of my family's secret first-class adventure. They had always insisted they needed my help, painting a picture of perpetual financial desperation. Yet somehow, they'd found enough money to afford extravagance without me. How long had they been playing me like a fool? On my third day, determined to at least pretend I was enjoying myself, I booked a fancy dinner cruise along the Seine. Sitting at a candlelit table for one, surrounded by honeymooners and anniversary-celebrating couples, the romantic atmosphere felt almost aggressively mocking. As the boat drifted past beautifully lit landmarks, my mind couldn't help drifting back to Ashley and my parents laughing together, comfortably settled into seats I'd unknowingly funded. Midway through a spectacularly presented but surprisingly bland chicken dish, Leah to Paris to make bland chicken elegant. Something clicked within me. A surge of anger rushed through my veins. It was as if every suppressed frustration had decided to rise simultaneously, refusing to be ignored. Why was I always expected to sacrifice my happiness? Why had I allowed guilt to guide so many years of my life? That night, lying awake in my hotel room beneath a picturesque French chandelier, my resolve hardened. This trip, though initially tarnished, had become my awakening. I would no longer finance a family who saw me merely as their personal ATM. The thought was as terrifying as it was liberating, but I knew it had to be done. Returning to Chicago felt like stepping back into a reality TV show I'd forgotten I was part of. As the plane descended over the familiar skyline, anxiety stirred in my stomach, knowing exactly what awaited me at home. I had barely unpacked when my phone predictably buzzed. Mom, ready to resume our regularly scheduled program of financial emergencies. I answered reluctantly, bracing myself for the usual polite chit-chat that inevitably led to the real agenda. Sure enough, after a perfunctory question about how Paris was, though clearly she didn't care, she launched into her newest crisis. The furnace had quit, right on cue with Chicago's brutal winter. This time, instead of reflexively reaching for my wallet, I found myself calmly but firmly refusing her request. Her stunned silence felt both satisfying and unnerving. Seizing the moment, I confronted her directly about their secret luxury trip. How had they afforded such extravagance without my knowing? Her defensive reply confirmed everything I'd suspected. She told me plainly they weren't obligated to report every decision they made, especially not to me. The conversation spiraled quickly into an argument. Her voice grew sharper, reminding me bitterly that they had raised me, sacrificed me, and therefore my financial support was the least I owed them. That entitlement hit harder than I anticipated. She argued that it was my duty because I had extra money and fewer responsibilities, conveniently ignoring the reality that my extra money was a result of careful budgeting and hard-earned sacrifices. Hearing these words, a clarity settled over me. My family's entitlement to my generosity had warped into expectation and now resentment. I had become the backup plan, the reliable emergency fund. My refusal wasn't merely about money. It was about reclaiming dignity and respect. The call ended abruptly, tension lingering heavily. I slumped onto my couch, staring blankly at souvenirs I brought back from Paris. Mementos now bittersweet. Questions filled my head. Had I just permanently fractured my relationship with my family? Was standing up for myself worth potentially losing them altogether? Yet, as the chilly Chicago wind rattled my apartment windows, a quiet resolve strengthened inside me. This confrontation had been long overdue. My family had crossed a line, and I had finally drawn my own boundaries. The hardest part was just beginning, but I knew deep down it was necessary. Reflecting on the surreal beauty and loneliness of Paris, I understood that this journey wasn't just about visiting a city I'd always dreamed of. It was about discovering my own worth. Paris had given me the courage to challenge a lifetime of emotional debts I'd never truly owed. Sitting alone, feeling both exhausted and oddly empowered, I prepared myself for the battles yet to come, realizing with profound clarity that this moment was my true turning point. After that tense call with my mom, the weeks that followed felt oddly peaceful yet unsettlingly unfamiliar. For the first time in years, my phone wasn't buzzing constantly with urgent pleas for money. It was bizarre, honestly. Suddenly, I found myself with free evenings and weekends. So much free time that I didn't even know what to do with it. Initially, I enjoyed this newfound liberty by binge-watching entire Netflix series I'd only heard coworkers talk about. I became embarrassingly good at trivia nights at the local dive bar, developing a reputation as that guy who knows weird stuff about 90s sitcoms. I even attempted cooking again, experimenting with recipes from those trendy cooking channels. Though, let's be real, my kitchen often ended up looking like a crime scene after each attempt. However, beneath all this newfound leisure lurked an uncomfortable sensation, guilt. Despite knowing I was justified, a nagging voice in my head suggested that maybe I was overreacting, that maybe I owed my family more patience and understanding. My parents' infrequent yet emotionally manipulative messages weren't helping. Each voicemail seemed carefully crafted to remind me of past obligations and family duties. Subtle guilt trips became their new weapon of choice. My uneasy peace came crashing down one particularly gloomy Saturday afternoon when Ashley broke her weeks-long silence with a phone call that started innocently enough but quickly spiraled into our first major argument. She launched straight into accusations of selfishness, labeling me as heartless for abandoning our parents when they needed me most. Her words hit hard, slicing through my carefully built defenses like knives. It was surreal hearing Ashley, the queen of self-centeredness, lecture me about selfish behavior. As she ranted, I mentally replayed countless instances of my financial support, paying for her kids' extracurricular activities, covering Ryan's disastrous attempts at entrepreneurship, even footing bills for emergencies that always seemed suspiciously timed. The irony was rich, richer than the overpriced latte I was sipping at my favorite local coffee shop as we argued. By the time she hung up abruptly, my heart raced with a mix of anger, frustration, and a strange sense of relief that we'd finally aired some of our buried grievances. Yet, the aftermath of our fight wasn't easy. Every moment of quiet solitude became an echo chamber, replaying Ashley's accusations. Even activities I'd begun to enjoy, like trivia nights, became tarnished by nagging self-doubt. Was I truly selfish, or had Ashley's manipulation twisted my perception? But whenever those doubts crept in, I'd force myself to recall the hidden first-class trip, quickly reaffirming that I'd made the right choice. Just as I thought the drama couldn't escalate further, my parents doubled down. Their calls became increasingly frequent, employing emotional appeals straight out of a daytime soap opera. Dad's voice quivered theatrically as he described imminent health scares, while Mom expertly wove tales of mounting debt and overdue bills. Each conversation felt like an exhausting dance, where they led, and I struggled to keep pace. The situation reached a fever pitch when my dad called one cold evening, his voice heavy with rehearsed despair, to inform me they could no longer make mortgage payments. The family home, the nostalgic epicenter of our childhood memories, was now teetering on foreclosure. A year ago, panic would have sent me scrambling to fix their problems. But now, a newfound determination anchored me firmly in reality. Instead of immediately caving, I challenged him directly, asking how they'd suddenly found money for extravagant travel, yet couldn't handle basic living expenses. His stunned silence confirmed my suspicions. For the first time ever, I confronted my father openly about the financial deception. He ended the call abruptly, leaving the bitter taste of unresolved anger hanging in the air. This decisive stance led me straight into the storm of family turmoil. I had officially crossed a line, becoming persona non grata. Yet alongside the harsh rejection came an unexpected clarity. I wasn't just cutting financial ties. I was finally dismantling years of unhealthy dynamics. Sure, the guilt stung, but there was undeniable empowerment in my newfound autonomy. Life adjusted slowly to this quieter rhythm, yet it wasn't without challenges. While my bank account thanked me, my heart wrestled with the ongoing emotional fallout. Family gatherings, once obligatory, became memories. Holidays were looming on the horizon, promising awkward solitude rather than cheerful chaos. Despite this, I felt oddly lighter, less burdened by the endless demands that had defined my adulthood. But just as I was settling into this strange new routine, life threw another curveball my way. One chilly evening, as I prepared another questionable attempt at homemade deep-dish pizza, the doorbell rang insistently, curious and slightly annoyed at the interruption. Seriously, pizza dough waits for no one. I opened the door to find Ashley standing there, visibly furious, her face flushed from either anger or the cold Chicago wind, probably both. Before I could muster a hello, she unleashed a verbal assault loud enough for my neighbors down the hall to hear clearly. She accused me of intentionally sabotaging our parents' lives, labeling me bitter, jealous, and worst of all, a failure, who envied her success. The sheer audacity of her accusations left me stunned, gripping the doorframe as though it could shield me from her venom. Standing there, watching Ashley vent years of pent-up frustration and entitlement in my doorway, I felt my patience snap. Here was my sister, someone I'd supported unconditionally for years, branding me as a jealous loser simply because I'd chosen self-respect over endless sacrifice. Her words echoed sharply in the tense silence between us, marking the undeniable climax of years of brewing tension. This confrontation wasn't merely about money. It was a culmination of decades of unspoken resentments, unfair burdens, and suppressed truths. Ashley's bitterness was evident, but so was my resolve. As I stood there absorbing the sting of her insults, a profound realization struck me. This heated face-off had been inevitable. Our family's fractured dynamics had finally exploded, laying bare wounds we'd ignored for far too long. Facing Ashley's relentless glare, I knew the gloves were finally off. In the aftermath of Ashley's explosive visit, my family fell into an unusual silence. Days turned into weeks, and it felt as though I'd suddenly lost my subscription to the world's most melodramatic reality show. Initially, the quiet felt uncomfortable, like stepping out of a bustling Chicago subway station onto a deserted street. But soon, I began to appreciate this unexpected tranquility. It was liberating to finally experience life without the incessant buzz of family crises. Yet, just as I was beginning to enjoy my newfound peace, my phone lit up with a flood of desperate messages from my parents. Their words dripped with emotional urgency, portraying me as a villain who had heartlessly turned his back on them in their darkest hour. They painted vivid scenarios of their impending ruin, subtly implying it was entirely my fault. I couldn't help but roll my eyes at the melodrama, though deep down, the familiar pang of guilt lingered. Amid this internal conflict, life in Chicago continued around me, oblivious to my family's saga. I immersed myself in small pleasures I'd previously ignored. I attended Cubs games with coworkers, loudly debating every questionable call by the umpires, indulged in deep-dish pizza outings that surely required extra gym visits, and even tried my hand at stand-up comedy during open mic nights, though my humor mostly consisted of self-deprecating jokes about my disastrous attempts at adulting. Despite these distractions, whispers from mutual friends soon pulled me back into family drama. Word spread quickly through our shared social circles that Ashley's picture-perfect marriage was fracturing due to severe financial strain. Friends mentioned overhearing explosive arguments between Ashley and Ryan during neighborhood cookouts, loud enough to compete with fireworks on the 4th of July. The irony was almost poetic. Their idyllic suburban dream, meticulously curated and generously subsidized by me, was now collapsing spectacularly. I felt a strange mixture of vindication and discomfort upon hearing this news. It was becoming clearer than ever how instrumental my role had been in maintaining their false image of success. Without my constant financial bailouts, their fragile house of cards was quickly collapsing. Yet, rather than satisfaction, I felt troubled by the weight of responsibility I'd unknowingly shouldered for so long. My introspection was abruptly interrupted one evening when Ashley decided to escalate our feud publicly. In a mutual friends group chat, usually reserved for sharing memes and coordinating trivia nights, Ashley boldly mocked my independence. She smugly predicted I'd soon return, claiming I was too weak to stand alone. Her words sparked a surprising wave of anger and determination within me, erasing any lingering doubts about the necessity of my actions. That single message was a catalyst I'd needed. Right then, I firmly decided to sever all ties permanently. My decision wasn't driven by bitterness alone, but rather an awakening to the toxic pattern I'd tolerated for far too long. With an uncharacteristic surge of decisiveness, I blocked my family's contacts on every possible platform. Each click of the button felt strangely empowering, like closing multiple chapters of a drama-filled book I'd finally grown tired of reading. Life post-blockade took on a refreshing new rhythm. Freed from familial burdens, I rediscovered the simple joys of everyday existence. My social life flourished. I rekindled friendships I'd long neglected, participated enthusiastically in local community events like Chicago's famous street festivals, and discovered that trivia nights felt even sweeter without the weight of family guilt. Embracing my newfound freedom inspired me to fulfill another personal dream, visiting Hawaii. Landing in Honolulu felt surreal, a stark contrast from the noisy streets of Chicago. I spent days exploring beaches with names I could barely pronounce, snorkeling in crystal-clear waters, and eating seafood fresh enough to make my usual sushi spot back home seem embarrassingly subpar. Standing on the warm sands of Waikiki, watching sunsets stray out of postcards, I finally understood what true liberation felt like. Yet, even paradise wasn't immune to family drama. One peaceful evening, as I relaxed on my balcony overlooking the Pacific, my phone buzzed unexpectedly, my father's number glaring at me defiantly. Hesitating only briefly, I answered, preparing myself for the emotional warfare I knew was coming. Predictably, he launched into a tirade filled with accusations and guilt-inducing scenarios designed to break my resolve. However, something fundamental had shifted within me. Instead of anxiety, I responded calmly but firmly, establishing clear boundaries that I had no intention of crossing again. His stunned silence on the other end felt profoundly satisfying. It was an unmistakable confirmation that I truly reclaimed control of my life. Returning to Chicago, I found myself greeted with cautious whispers from mutual friends, updating me on Ashley's worsening marital situation. Apparently, Ryan had moved out, their picturesque suburban home now resembling a battlefield more than a haven. Friends described tense, awkward encounters with Ashley, who seemed increasingly frantic as her carefully crafted life unraveled. Oddly, this news brought me no joy, only a quiet sadness at witnessing the inevitable outcomes of years spent chasing illusions. However, amidst the ongoing drama, my life thrived without the constant shadow of family obligations. Work became more enjoyable, social engagements more authentic, and even my cooking skills marginally improved, though friends still teased that my kitchen experiments resembled amateur chemistry more than culinary art. Just as I settled into a genuinely fulfilling rhythm, a final twist awaited me. Late one evening, my phone screen lit up with an unexpected notification from my mother. Unlike previous communications, her tone was startlingly different. Sincere, humble, and filled with genuine regret. She openly acknowledged their mistakes, admitting they'd allowed pride and entitlement to cloud their judgment. Her words held a depth of remorse I'd secretly longed for, but never realistically anticipated. Yet, as I absorbed her heartfelt apology, a stark realization settled heavily upon me. Her admission, though meaningful, was too little and far too late. After reading my mother's heartfelt apology, I found myself deeply conflicted. On one hand, it felt validating to finally have my emotions acknowledged. On the other hand, the wounds they'd left over the years ran deep, and words alone couldn't erase the decades of emotional neglect and manipulation. Despite my reservations, I knew a final conversation was necessary. Not for them, but for myself. We agreed to meet at a local coffee shop off Michigan Avenue, a neutral zone filled with the comforting aroma of fresh espresso and pastries. My nerves were jittery as if I'd already had 3 cups of coffee, and the Chicago chill outside did nothing to calm me. As I walked in, the sight of my mother sitting there, looking unusually vulnerable, made my heart pound louder. For once, the ever-composed matriarch of our family seemed genuinely uncertain. Our conversation began awkwardly, filled with uneasy pauses and the quiet hum of espresso machines in the background. My mother surprised me by immediately expressing remorse, openly admitting the years they'd spent relying heavily on my generosity. She acknowledged the financial strain and emotional toll their constant demands had placed on me. As she spoke, I saw glimpses of the mother I'd always wanted, honest, open, and truly sorry. I took a deep breath and, for the first time, fully expressed everything I'd held back for so long. I explained how it felt to be treated as nothing more than a financial backup, the pain caused by discovering their secret luxurious trips, and the hurtful sting of Ashley's dismissive words at the airport. Each confession visibly affected my mother, her eyes watering slightly with genuine emotion as she listened without interruption. Yet, even amid this moment of genuine connection, I realized something important. Forgiveness didn't mean return to old habits. It meant recognizing past wrongs and choosing to move forward differently, clearly and compassionately. I explained that while I still loved them, I could no longer be their constant support system. My mother nodded slowly, understanding but visibly saddened by this new reality. With that heavy conversation behind me, life started feeling lighter. For the first time in years, I began truly enjoying everyday activities without the shadow of family obligations looming over me. I savored simple joys like lazy Sunday mornings with fresh donuts from my favorite Chicago bakery, spontaneous road trips to Lake Michigan, and hilariously failed cooking experiments that usually ended in ordering takeout. Amid these newfound freedoms, fate introduced me to someone special, Catherine. We met at a friend's birthday party at a trendy downtown pizza spot, laughing over our shared inability to handle Chicago's spiciest hot sauce. Catherine's easygoing nature, humor, and genuine kindness quickly became a cornerstone in my life. Our relationship flourished effortlessly, filled with laughter, mutual respect, and endless debates over whether deep dish or thin crust pizza reigned supreme. One crisp autumn evening, while wandering to Millennium Park, Catherine playfully suggested we plan a trip to Italy, a destination we both dreamed about visiting. The idea of exploring ancient ruins in Rome, tasting authentic pasta in Florence, and embarrassing ourselves with cheesy tourist photos at the Leaning Tower of Pisa was too appealing to resist. We booked our flights impulsively, the thrill of adventure overtaking any lingering doubts. Our Italian getaway was nothing short of magical. We navigated bustling streets in Rome, indulged in gelato far too often, and laughed until our sides hurt during a gondola ride in Venice, when the gondolier nearly lost his hat in the breeze. Each day was filled with carefree moments that reaffirmed my decision to break away from past burdens. With Catherine by my side, life felt uncomplicated, authentic, and joyful. Yet, even thousands of miles away, my family drama managed to reach me. One quiet evening on our balcony overlooking the streets of Florence, my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. Curiosity piqued. I answered to hear my father's voice, launching immediately into an aggressive, guilt-laden speech. This time, however, I felt no anxiety or pressure. Calmly but firmly, I reiterated my boundaries and made clear that their manipulative tactics wouldn't work anymore. His stunned silence was my final confirmation that I'd truly grown beyond their control. Back in Chicago, life with Catherine continued beautifully. Our days were filled with shared adventures, cozy evenings watching movies, and regular date nights exploring Chicago's endless culinary scene. She often joked about my improving cooking skills, though we both knew most of my culinary successes came from her timely interventions rather than my own talent. Then, unexpectedly, my phone buzzed again with another message, this time unmistakably from my mother. Unlike previous communications, her message was genuinely remorseful, expressing deep regret for their past actions. She openly acknowledged the harm they'd caused, driven by pride and entitlement, admitting their mistakes without excuses. Reading her words felt bittersweet, as it was everything I'd hoped to hear years earlier but had long given up expecting. As I absorbed her heartfelt apology, clarity settled over me. Her words, though sincere, arrived far too late to mend our relationship fully. I had moved forward, built a healthier, happier life, and discovered genuine love and respect. Holding Catherine's hand tightly, overlooking the bustling city skyline from our balcony, I knew I had finally achieved true liberation. I felt grateful for the lessons learned, but more importantly, I was excited about the future, a future filled with genuine happiness, authentic relationships, and the freedom I'd always deserved. Life after setting firm boundaries with my family felt like waking up from a chaotic dream into a surprisingly serene reality. Catherine and I settled into a comfortable rhythm, enjoying simple pleasures like lazy brunches at cozy diners, hilarious debates over whether Chicago hot dogs truly needed ketchup, and endless reruns of classic sitcoms. The drama that once consumed my daily existence was now replaced by laughter, genuine connection, and the comforting predictability I'd longed for. Encouraged by Catherine's unwavering support and endless optimism, I began nurturing another dream, opening my own cafe right in the heart of Chicago. I'd spent years helping build other people's dreams, and now it was finally time to pursue my own. After months of planning, endless cups of coffee, and humorous mishaps like accidentally ordering 3 times the amount of espresso beans needed, seriously, our apartment looked like a storage facility. Dan's Coffee Corner officially opened its doors. Opening day was unforgettable. Friends and new customers packed the cozy space, the air thick with the scent of fresh coffee and pastries from the best local bakeries. Jokes flew around about lifetime discounts, especially from my buddies claiming they'd personally kept me caffeinated enough to start this venture. Serving my first latte behind the counter felt surreal and incredible, and I realized in that moment just how far I'd truly come. Of course, even my new peaceful life wasn't entirely free from past. Occasionally, I'd receive messages from unknown numbers, usually around holidays or birthdays. My family tried cautiously to reconnect, offering stiff greetings that felt more obligatory than genuine. While I'd forgiven them, I knew maintaining distance was necessary. It wasn't out of anger or bitterness, but simply because I'd finally found peace and wasn't willing to sacrifice it again. Then one chilly spring morning, Mixed in with the usual bills and advertisements, I noticed a familiar handwriting on an envelope. It was Ashley's. My heart skipped as I carefully opened it, preparing myself for whatever emotional roller coaster awaited inside. Her letter was surprisingly candid, heartfelt, and vulnerable. She openly admitted her past mistakes, the unfairness of her behavior, and her genuine regret over losing our relationship. She even humorously confessed she missed my ridiculously terrible jokes at family gatherings. Reading Ashley's words sparked deep compassion within me. I could imagine how difficult it had been for her to write that letter. Still, I also understood clearly that forgiving didn't mean falling back into old, unhealthy patterns. With that in mind, I penned a careful response, genuinely forgiving her but explaining firmly my decision to continue forward independently. It wasn't about punishment. It was about self-preservation and personal growth. Life continued beautifully after that. Dan's Coffee Corner quickly became a beloved neighborhood fixture, attracting a steady stream of regulars who joked that they came for the coffee but stayed for my comedic skills. Catherine playfully warned customers about trying any pastries I'd personally baked, branding them as dangerously experimental. Our circle of friends expanded naturally, built on laughter, genuine friendship, and spontaneous weekend outings around Chicago. From attending summer music festivals at Grant Park to fiercely competitive trivia nights at our local bar, life felt refreshingly normal and joyfully uncomplicated. One evening, as friends crowded around our small apartment for a board game night, complete with enthusiastic arguments over Monopoly rules, I found myself quietly reflecting on everything that had led to this point. From the loneliness I'd felt standing by myself in Paris to the chaotic family drama, every challenging moment had shaped my path to genuine happiness. Watching Catherine laughing hysterically over a friend's outrageous strategy in the game, I felt a wave of immense gratitude. My past no longer felt heavy. It was simply a series of stepping stones that had brought me exactly where I needed to be. I had learned the importance of boundaries, self-respect, and surrounded myself with people who genuinely valued and respected me. Later that evening, as our friends filtered out with cheerful goodbyes, promising rematches, and teasing me about my competitive streak, Catherine leaned against me, comfortably watching the city lights flicker through our apartment window. At that moment, it hit me fully. I was genuinely free. My journey hadn't been easy. Life rarely is. But every obstacle I'd faced had been worth overcoming. I'd built a life based on authenticity, respect, and genuine connection. I felt deeply grateful for every hard-earned lesson that brought me to this moment. Looking at Catherine, her smile warm and comforting, I realized my future was brighter than I'd ever imagined possible. Surrounded by true friends, unconditional love, and the simple joy of everyday life, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd finally found a happiness and peace I'd always deserved.